Hello, and welcome to this particular session on CSS. My name is Shoaib Ismail, and this session we'll look at how to make our web pages more attractive and how to control the design of your web pages using CSS. CSS allows you to create rules that specify how the content of an element should appear. For example, you can specify that the background of your page should be green, or you can specify that the text in your web pages should be red, blue, or green. Once you have learned how to write CSS rules, you will be able to design elegant and responsive websites that are visually appealing and more accessible to people. So, in this video, I will introduce you to CSS rules and how it works. I'll teach you how to understand the CSS anatomy and how to write your own CSS rules. I'll show you how CSS rules are applied to HTML pages, and I'll take you through selectors such as IDs, classes, attributes, pseudo classes and pseudo elements, and other important CSS attributes. So without much further ado, let's look at the introduction to CSS.
CSS allows you to create rules that specify how the content of an element should appear on a web page. It allows you to set font sizes, font family or type, text and image alignment. It also gives you the opportunity to specify colors, margin, and the visibility of objects on your web page. The key to understanding how CSS works is to imagine that there is an invisible box around every HTML element. For CSS, you have to think inside the box. This is a basic HTML page with a header, a paragraph, and a paragraph text. What I've done on the right is to add border lines to each of the elements and to see how CSS treats each element as if it lives in its own box. CSS allows you to create rules that control the way that each individual object and the content of that box is presented. Now, in this example, we have the block level elements such as the H1, and then that's the header, and then also the paragraph element. Alright, so on this example, I have the body element, which have the dotted line outside it. Then also I have the heading, which have the blue border around them. So CSS will treat this as a full box, and every style that you apply applies to this. Now, CSS works by associating rules with HTML element. Now, these rules govern how the contents of the specified element should be displayed. So a CSS rule will look like this. And here we have the paragraph tag, that's the P tag, that is the selector. All right. And then also we have the declaration here. Now, for the declaration, we have the property and the value. Now, remember that this P is coming from the HTML. So this is what is linking to our HTML. This is serving as a reference to our HTML. So the selector is from the HTML. In this case, P, that's for the paragraph. Then we have our color, which is the property. And then the color we are giving to the paragraph is red. So this whole area, the color and the color specification, or the property and the value, is the declaration. Remember to end your CSS, your declarations with a semicolon. So at this juncture, at this point, I'll move to the text editor so that we can see how this is displayed in the text editor. Now, for the CSS anatomy, what we are trying to see here, CSS anatomy looks like this. We have a selector, and in a curly bracket, we have something known as declaration. Now, in the declaration itself consists of two items. We have the property, the semicolon, and then a value. Now, what we mean here is that the selector is the reference. All right, it indicates the elements that the rule is going to apply to. All right, so here we have paragraph tag, we have an H2, and then we have an H1 here. So we have to specify what are we selecting, what element or tag should the rule that we are going to specify here, that the property and value, should apply to. So if you want that to apply to all paragraphs, then we're going to state it here. P, that is the selector. If you want that to apply to the paragraph, so we have to now replace that here. P, that is the selector. So that is what we are making reference to. The style or the rule should apply to the paragraph tag. All right. Now, what do we want to be applied to the paragraph tag? That is the declaration. Now, the declaration, as I said earlier, consists of two items, the property and the value. The property indicates the aspects of the element you want to change. So we want to change the color of this particular selector. We want to change the color of this selector, that is the paragraph. We want to change the color. So we put here color. And the value we are giving to the color, all right, the settings we are giving to the color is red. So when we save this, I see that the paragraph text changed to red. So that is what you need to understand first, that for you to apply your changes, for you to apply your rules, you first of all need to have something known as selector, and then you need your curly brackets. In the curly brackets, you need a declaration. Now, the declaration in itself is made up of two items, the property and then the value. We can add more than one declarations or more than one row to one particular selector. So for this paragraph alone, I can also add another row, font size to be probably 20 pixels. And the font size of the paragraph tag is going to be increased. All right. Now I can also continue to add another declaration here. So I can have font width to be maybe 700 here, and that will be bolded. All right. So these are the declarations. More than one declaration can be applied to only one selector. All right. You should also know that we can also apply more than one declaration to more than one selector. So I want to add an effect to this particular H1 and H2. So what I'm going to do is H1, H2, and I want the H1 and H2 to have a color of blue, and this is what happens. All right. So to add more selectors on the same line, I need to use the comma here. So using the comma, I'm able to add another selector. So with this also, you can have more than one row applying to these two items. That's H1 and H2. So I can have font family, then one. Yeah, so I've changed the font family now to a different font family. So you can, as I said, you can have a lot of declarations to each of them, a lot of declarations to several CSS selectors. So remember to separate that with comma. So I can have as many as I want here. So I can have, if I have an H1, if I have an H3 here, I can add it. If I have another element here, that is an image, I can add it. So I can have as many elements that I want to give this particular rules to. So that is what is happening here. All right, the next thing is to look at how to add our styles to HTML. All right, we can use a method known as the inline styles. For the inline styles, they are declarations that affect a single HTML element contained within a style attribute. So what it means is that we use an attribute in our HTML. We use an attribute known as style. All right, so what we do is that, let's say this H1, which is my book website here, I want to style this. So I come to the opening tag of the HTML, and then in there I add an attribute. So the attribute name is style. So style, and then in there I give it a color of red and end it with a semicolon as well. So remember the same rules, the way the rules are written are the same here. Whether it's going to be inline or anywhere else, we are still going to have our property, all right, and then our value. Now what is missing here is that the selector, all right, the selector, you are already writing this particular code or this rule in the selector, right? So you are not going to write it outside any other thing, but you are writing it in the selector, so there's no need you reference it again. So this is how the inline style looks like. So we can have as many as we want here. We can have a background color for this to be blue, and this is blue. All right, so these are some of the things that you should know. You can reference your CSS or your styles this way. All right, now but one thing to note is that actually this particular practice is actually the opposite of best practice. All right, it is the least efficient implementation of CSS because it becomes difficult when you yourself are coming back to edit your own website. Now considering you want to apply these same styles to um, H2. It means you have to come and retype that style. You have to retype that also here and give it the same thing. All right. So you see, you have to do repetitive work. Meanwhile, in coding, all that we're trying to achieve is to do less, is to do more with less code. All right. So you don't have to repeat yourself. So that is why this particular practice is not really advisable. Right? There are instances whereby you have to use this, but and for best practice, actually, you don't need to use this. And moreover, we are trying to separate our styles from our HTML. That is separating the style from the structure. So when we are doing this, still going away from that, we need to go back and then make sure we are putting our styles in one particular aspect. So that is what we need to understand as well.
The next one we're going to look at is internal style sheet. For the internal style sheet, we place it in the head aspect of the HTML. Now, when we get to HTML, where we have the title place that's in the head, the head contains the meta tags, the type. So we have the CSS style also placed there. This is what we refer to as the internal style sheet. What we do is we place the style, all the styles, all the CSS rows in an element known as the style tag, and this style tag is further placed into the head. Right, so before the closing head we have this placed there. Now that's what I have here: style, the opening tag, and then the closing tag. Now our styles will go in here in between this opening and the closing style tag. So just like what we did earlier, we can still do our styles here. So in this example, I'm targeting or I'm selecting the paragraph tags. So P, also this is our selector. Then we have our curly brackets. In the curly bracket, we can decide to change the color of this particular text, that is the paragraph text. We are changing it to this time orange color. And let's see what happens. And then we can see the effects here. So the same rules applies here. We need to have our selector followed by our declaration. The declaration, we need to have our property and then our value. And remember, the property and the value are separated by a colon, and then the end, at the end of the declaration we have a semicolon at the end. So this is what we have. We can do everything here. We can add a font size here as well to be 24 pixels. All right, we can have font width to be 800. All right. Right, so we can have a lot of styles. We can do all our styles in the head part, that is then the style tag of the HTML, which will also affect our CSS. So here too, we can do our multiple styling. So we can have multiple selectors. We can have H1 and H2, since that is this and this. So you can have H1 and H2 here, and our curly bracket. We can give them a background color of red and the text color of white. Alright, so we can do all the styles here as well. This is known as the internal style sheet. This is also one of the ways of putting a style sheet in our web pages, but this is equally not advisable. Let's look at the third example of embedding style sheet in our HTML or in our web pages. Another way we can add styles to our HTML is to use the external style sheet. For external style sheet, what it means is that we have a separate file, a file containing all our styles, and then we link that file to our HTML page. That means that the HTML page will be loaded, and then the files which contains our CSS will also be loaded. So these are separate things: our HTML file, and then our CSS or our style file. So the web page is there, then we have the style loaded onto the web page. So that is the external style sheet. So for external style sheet, as I said, we need our separate file. So I already have a separate file here created, and I save it as .css. All right, because this is going to be a CSS file. So .css. Now I've saved that also in my folder, a folder containing my index.html and my style.css. So these two files are in the same directory. Now in my HTML, I will need to link this. Now first of all, before I link it, let me come to my CSS and try giving an effect, or try showing writing a rule and see whether it will be applied to my page or not. So I'm going to give paragraph and give it my curly brackets, and the paragraph I'm putting my declaration. The property I'm going to take here is background color. So I'm saying select the background color, that's the selector. Select the paragraph, that is the selector. And for the paragraph, I want you to give it a background color. So the background color, I need to define it now. That is the value. So the definition I'm giving it to right now is that the color should be black. The background color should be black. All right. So if I save this, nothing happens. All right. If I save this, nothing happens because I want this text to have a black background. All right. But when I save this, nothing is happening. This is because I have not linked this style sheet to my index.html. So I'll have to do that. Now to link this style sheet so that these rules can be applied to this page, to link it to the index.html, we need to go to our index.html and our head part here, and our head part either before or after the title tag, we will need to use a link. All right, we use a link. So we use a link, so we need to use this link here, a link, and then when we put the link, we need to show the reference. All right, so we have an href here targeting where the style sheet is. All right, so style.css. All right, we can equally add the relationship the relationship with this one, which is the style sheet. All right, and this is a self-closing tab, so it will close itself. All right, now when we do this, it means that we have been able to link the HTML, all right, and the style sheet together. So the styles are here, and then the link to this particular styles has been defined here, and that is the style.css. Right, so this is how we're going to link our style.html file. Now what I need to do is to save it. So after saving this file, you see that all the paragraph tags now have a black background because that is what I've specified in my style sheet. So in the style sheet, I stated that all the background of the paragraph tags should be black, and that is what has happened. Remember, if you make a mistake with the style sheet, if you make a mistake with linking of the style sheet, I think this will not work. So for example, if I get here and instead of writing style, I wanted the E here, if I save this, say that this will not work. So you have to make sure you are putting the right reference, the right link to this, otherwise it will not work. So this is how we link the style sheets, and by far this is the most accepted way. This is one of the best ways for you to link your style. What it means is that if you have multiple pages, then you will be able to now link the same style sheet to multiple HTML pages. So if you have about page, if you have services page, if you have contact page, and if you have an index page, you'll be able to use the same style sheet to link them. And the benefit, one of the benefits of this is it helps the loading time. The performance of the website becomes faster. The sense that one style sheet is loaded, and then that is all. For the other pages, when you are going to the services page, the browser doesn't have to load another style sheet. No, it loads the same style sheet and then it's saved in the local storage of the browser, so it loads faster compared to when you have different style sheets on different pages. Moreover, when you are editing this, you know very well that all the styles are here. So if your aim is to come and change this, so I have this, all I need to do is to change the paragraph, to change the text of the color of the paragraphs. So I can leave this white so that my website can look like this. I think it's much easier rather than going to the inline styles, editing line by line, line by line. This is much better and efficient for your code.